The fluorescent lights of the courtroom hummed, a dull counterpoint to the frantic thumping of my heart. My palms were slick with sweat, and my throat felt like sandpaper. I clutched the worn fabric of my dress, the one I bought for Julian's graduation, a lifetime ago. It felt strange, wearing it here, in this cold, impersonal space. Miss Thompson, Judge Mallory's voice, crisp and authoritative, cut through the stagnant air. Please proceed. I swallowed hard, trying to dislodge the lump that had formed there. My gaze swept across the room, landing on my parents. They sat stiffly in the front row, their faces carefully blank. My brother, Mark, wasn't here. Of course he wasn't. He was probably off enjoying the education I paid for. Your Honor, I began, my voice trembling slightly. This case is about family betrayal. A daughter's sacrifice turns into a shocking theft. I paused, drawing a shaky breath. It's about the unraveling of trust, the shattering of a family, and the theft of not just money, but of dreams. My lawyer, Ms. Diaz, gave me a small, encouraging nod. I tried to focus on her steady presence, but my eyes kept drifting back to my parents. Their impassivity was more unnerving than any outburst could have been. I grew up in what I believed to be a loving, middle-class family. I continued, my voice gaining a little strength. We had a modest 3-bedroom house in the suburbs, family dinners every Sunday, and summer vacations at the lake. My father worked as an accountant, my mother as a librarian. We weren't rich, but we were comfortable. Or so I thought. We weren't extravagant, I clarify, remembering the small, carefully chosen Christmas gifts, the hand-me-down clothes, the way my mother meticulously clipped coupons. But we had everything we needed. The lie tasted bitter on my tongue. We hadn't had everything we needed. I hadn't. I'd needed the opportunity to pursue my dreams, to become a veterinarian, a dream I'd nurtured since I was a little girl bandaging the wings of injured birds. When I received my acceptance letter to UC Davis's veterinary program, I said, my voice catching again, it was the happiest day of my life. I remember the thrill of ripping open the envelope, the weight of the thick paper in my hands, the way my heart had soared. But that happiness was short-lived. I looked directly at my parents, my gaze unwavering. My parents told me they couldn't afford my tuition. Their expressions remained unchanged, their eyes fixed on some point beyond me. They said they had just enough saved for my brother, Mark's engineering degree. He was 2 years younger than me, just starting community college. They said it was his best chance, his only chance, for a secure future. I closed my eyes for a moment. The memory of that conversation still raw, still painful. The disappointment, the crushing weight of their words, the understanding that my dreams were being sacrificed for his. They asked me to defer my acceptance, to work for a year, to save up money. They promised, swore to me, that after Mark's first year, they would help me with my tuition. I opened my eyes, the courtroom suddenly feeling too small, the air too thick. I trusted them, I said. The words a hollow whisper. I dropped everything, put my dreams on hold, and got a job. 2 jobs, actually. I worked as a waitress during the day and a cashier at night. I remembered the exhaustion, the endless cycle of work and sleep, the gnawing feeling of resentment that I pushed down. Buried deep inside, I scrimped and saved every penny, sending a portion of my earnings home each month to help with the family expenses, believing I was contributing to a shared goal. For 2 years, I emphasized, I poured every ounce of my energy into saving for my future. I missed out on so much: friends, relationships, experiences. I thought of Julian, of how our relationship had withered under the strain of my relentless work schedule, all for a dream that was stolen from me. Miss Diaz placed a reassuring hand on my arm. Jessica, she said gently, can you tell the court what happened next? I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what I had to say. A few weeks ago, I received an eviction notice. My voice cracked. My parents hadn't been paying the mortgage. They'd used my savings, the money I had slaved over, the money meant for my education. They'd used it all to pay for Mark's tuition at a prestigious private university. The words hung heavy in the air, the silence broken only by the quiet hum of the fluorescent lights. I could feel the weight of the judge's gaze, the curious stares of the few people scattered in the gallery. Even my parents, their faces still carefully composed, seemed to hold their breath. I confronted them. I continued, the anger simmering just below the surface. They admitted everything. They said they'd always prioritized Mark's education over mine. They said he was the smart one, the one with real potential. They claimed I would just get married and have kids anyway, that my education wouldn't matter. The words stung, even now, the injustice of it all, the casual cruelty of their dismissal, the years of sacrifice thrown back in my face like a worthless trinket. I was homeless on my birthday, I said, my voice barely a whisper. Today I should have been celebrating another step towards my dream. I was packing my meager belongings, wondering where I would sleep that night. I looked at my parents, my heart a leaden weight in my chest. This lawsuit isn't just about the money, it's about accountability. It's about a family's secret, betrayal, eviction, and a chance at redemption. It's about reclaiming my future. And as I met their gaze, I knew, with a chilling certainty, that I wouldn't rest until I got it back. The courtroom air hung thick and heavy, a suffocating blanket of tension. My parents, seated across from me, avoided my gaze. Good. Let them stew in their guilt. Stolen savings. A broken family faces eviction, leading to a dramatic twist. My lawyer, Ms. Stern, had just laid out the opening arguments, detailing how my parents, Richard and Deborah Thompson, had systematically drained my savings account money I'd earned tirelessly, sacrificing my own education to keep our family afloat. Now, we faced eviction, and they feigned innocence. The judge called for a recess, and my mind drifted back. It was a sweltering July day, the kind where the air hung thick and still, shimmering with heat. The scent of barbecue wafted from Mrs. Henderson's backyard next door, a constant reminder of the normalcy we no longer possessed. Dad had lost his job a few weeks prior, and the jovial atmosphere that usually permeated our home had been replaced with a gnawing anxiety. Jessica? Honey, could you come here for a minute? Mum's voice called from the living room. My heart clenched. Her tone was that careful, overly sweet one she used when she needed something. Something she knew I wouldn't want to give. I was in my room, meticulously organizing my college applications. Each brochure, each acceptance letter, represented a dream I was slowly watching crumble. Coming, Mom, I replied, trying to inject a lightness I didn't feel. I walked into the living room to find Dad sitting on the couch, his face buried in his hands. The sight twisted a knot in my stomach. He looked smaller somehow, defeated. My brother, Mark, was sprawled on the floor, flicking through a gaming magazine, oblivious to the tension crackling in the air. We need to talk, Dad said, his voice muffled. He looked up, his eyes redrimmed. About Mark's tuition. My brother, Mark, the golden child, one who could do no wrong. He'd been accepted into a prestigious engineering program, a program that came with a hefty price tag. A price tag we couldn't afford. We were a little sure, Mum chimed in, her voice strained. She perched on the arm of the couch, her hand resting on Dad's shoulder, a gesture of comfort that felt strangely performative. I already knew where this was going. A cold dread settled in my chest. How short? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. I already knew the answer, but I had to hear them say it. I needed to hear them confirm my worst fears. Dad sighed, A heavy, defeated sound. Quite short, Jess. We were hoping you could help. Help, I repeated, the word catching in my throat. How? I knew how. They wanted my college fund, the money I'd slaved over, the money I'd earned working double shifts at the diner, the money that represented my escape, my future. We know you've been saving diligently, Mom said, a voice laced with a false cheerfulness that grated on my nerves. And we know this is a big ask, but Mark's future is so important and mine isn't. The words burst out of me, sharper than I intended. The room went silent. Mark finally looked up from his magazine, his eyes flitting between me and our parents. Jessica, that's not fair, Mom said, her voice tight. We know how much college means to you, but Mark has a real opportunity here. This could change his life. And what about my life? I asked, my voice trembling. What about my dreams? You can always go to college later, Jess, Dad said, his tone pleading. Mark needs this now. Later, I laughed. A hollow, brittle sound. Later. When I'm 30, 40. When I've spent my best years working to support my family. Don't be dramatic, Jessica, Mum snapped, her facade of composure finally cracking. We're doing what's best for the family, I repeated, the word dripping with sarcasm. Or just Mark. The argument stretched on. A painful, circular dance of pleas, justifications, and accusations. I argued. I pleaded. I begged him to reconsider. I pointed out my acceptance letters, the scholarships I'd earned, the sacrifices I'd already made. They remained unmoved. Mark, meanwhile, remained silent, absorbed back in his magazine, as if the conversation didn't concern him, as if my future wasn't being sacrificed for his. Finally, exhausted and defeated, I agreed. I agreed to give them my savings. I agreed to postpone my dreams. I agreed to put my life on hold for my family, for Mark. That sweltering July day, the scent of barbecue from next door became a symbol of everything I was losing. It was the day my future was stolen. The day my family betrayed me. The day I began to understand the true meaning of sacrifice. And now, years later, sitting in this sterile courtroom, the bitterness of that day rose up in my throat, choking me with its intensity. I looked at my parents, their faces etched with a mixture of anxiety and defiance. They hadn't just taken my money. They'd taken my trust, my faith in them. And I was here to take it back. The metallic tang of stale coffee clung to the air in the diner booth, a smell I'd come to associate with exhaustion and disappointment. I traced circles on the condensation ring Formica tabletop, the chipped red surface mirroring the fractured state of my heart. Another double shift, Jess. Carol, the waitress with a perpetually tired smile, asked. You're gonna work yourself to the bone. I managed a weak smile back. Got to do what you got to do, Carol. She placed a mug in front of me, its thick ceramic comforting in my hand. Anything exciting happening in your life these days? Besides, keeping everyone else's afloat, she asked, her tone laced with genuine concern. Exciting wasn't exactly the word I'd use to describe my life. Devastating, betrayed. Those were more fitting. My stomach clenched, the bitterness of the memory rising in my throat. I'd just dropped out of Stanford, a sacrifice I made willingly, believing it was the right thing to do. My family was struggling. Dad had lost his job, and Mum's part-time income wasn't enough to keep us afloat, let alone pay for my brother, Mark's, college tuition. Mark, the golden child, the prodigal son, me. I was just Jess, the reliable one, the one who could put her dreams on hold. Not much, I told Carol, pushing the memory away, just trying to keep busy. I remember that conversation with Mark so clearly. It was a chilly autumn evening, to leaves a vibrant tapestry of reds and golds outside our living room window. He was sprawled on the couch, flipping through a college brochure, a smug grin plastered on his face. "So, Stanford, huh?" he'd said, tossing the brochure onto the coffee table. "Think you'll actually make it?" The question, laced with his usual condescension, stung more than it should have. "I got in," I said, my voice tight. "Doesn't mean you'll stay in," he retorted, his eyes glinting with malicious amusement. "What's that supposed to mean?" I asked, my hands starting to clench. "Oh, come on, Jess. Don't be so naive," he said, getting up from the couch and walking towards me. "You think Dad can afford Stanford, even with your scholarship? It's a stretch. Someone's gonna have to make sacrifices around here." His words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken meaning. I stared at him, a knot forming in my stomach. "What are you talking about?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He sighed dramatically, as if I were the one being difficult. "Look, Jess, be realistic. Dad's out of work. Mom's barely making ends meet. It's either your fancy education or mine. And let's be honest, who's more likely to actually make something of themselves?" He smirked, and in that moment, I saw the depth of his selfishness, the utter lack of regard for my dreams. It felt like a punch to the gut. Stolen savings, a broken family faces eviction, leading to a dramatic twist. The words echoed in my head, the bitter reality of my situation sinking in. "You think you're better than me?" I asked, my voice trembling with anger. He just shrugged, his smirk widening. "I'm the one with the talent, Jess. You're just practical." The word dripped with disdain. Practical. It was the word my parents always used to describe me: responsible, dependable, never brilliant, never exceptional, just practical. The one they could count on to sacrifice everything for the family, and I did. I dropped out of Stanford, took on to jobs, worked myself to exhaustion to ensure Mark could pursue his talent. I remember the day I told my parents my decision. They were sitting at the kitchen table, their faces etched with worrying. "I've decided to defer Stanford," I said, my voice catching in my throat. My mother's eyes widened. "Defer? But, Jessica, it's just for a year." I lie, forcing a smile. "I want to help out. Make sure Mark can finish his degree." My father reached out and patted my hand. "That's our girl," he said, his voice thick with emotion. Always putting family first. In that moment, I felt a flicker of pride, a sense of purpose. I was doing the right thing. I was being the dutiful daughter. Weeks turned into months, and the weight of my sacrifice began to bear down on me. The double shifts at the diner, the late-night cleaning job at the office building, the constant exhaustion gnawing at my bones. But I pushed through, fueled by the belief that I was doing it for my family. I was securing their future, even if it meant sacrificing my own. I'd even managed to save a little, tucking away a few dollars each week, hoping to eventually go back to school. That dream, however small, kept me going. One rainy afternoon, I came home early from work, feeling unwell. The apartment was unusually quiet. I walked towards my parents' bedroom, intending to ask for some aspirin. The door was slightly ajar, and I heard voices, hushed and urgent. "Are you sure this is right?" My mother's voice, laced with anxiety. "We don't have a choice, Martha," my father replied, his voice sharp. "Mark's tuition is due. This is the only way." Curiosity gnawing at me, I pushed the door open further, just enough to see inside. My father was holding my bank book, his face pale. My bank book, the one where I'd painstakingly saved every penny I'd earned, the one that held my hopes for the future. Family betrayal. A daughter's sacrifice turns into a shocking theft. The words echoed in my mind, the realization hitting me like a physical blow. They were stealing my money, my savings, the money I had slaved away for, sacrificing my own dreams to earn. They were using it to pay for Mark's tuition, my brother. The golden child, the one who had mocked my aspirations, was benefiting from my sacrifice in the most cruel and deceitful way imaginable. My legs felt weak, and I stumbled back, my hand flying to my mouth to stifle a sob. I couldn't believe it. My own parents, the people I loved and trusted the most, had betrayed me in the most unimaginable way. The floor seemed to tilt beneath me, and I gripped the doorframe for support, my heart pounding in my chest. The metallic tang of betrayal filled the air, thicker and more suffocating than the stale diner coffee. I wanted to scream, to confront them, to demand an explanation, but the words wouldn't come. All I could feel was the crushing weight of their deception, a shattering realization that my sacrifice had been for nothing. I backed away slowly, closing the door behind me, the sound echoing in the sudden silence of the apartment. I walked to my room, numb with shock and disbelief, the world around me seeming to crumble into dust. The stale air of the courthouse still clung to me, a mix of dust and desperation. I sat in Julian's car, the engine idling, my phone clutched in my hand, ready to go. "Jess?" he asked, his voice gentle. I shook my head. "Not yet. Just give me a minute." He squeezed my shoulder. "I know this is hard, but you're doing the right thing." He was right, of course. Suing my own parents. It felt surreal. A twisted family drama playing out in the harsh light of the legal system. A family's secret. Betrayal, eviction, and a chance at redemption. That was my life now. "It's just everything feels so wrong," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. The lawsuit, the betrayal, the eviction notice looming over us, it all felt like a bad dream. I just keep thinking about how much I worked, how much I gave up. Julian nodded. He knew. He'd seen me come home exhausted after double shifts at the diner, seen the worrying etched on my face as I meticulously tracked every penny, making sure there was enough for the mortgage, for my brother Mark's tuition, for groceries. "I should have been in college right now," I said, staring out the window at the bustling city streets. "I should be studying, making friends, planning my future." Instead, I was fighting my own family for my survival. They just threw it all away. The anger, simmering beneath the surface for weeks, threatened to boil over. "They didn't appreciate it, Jess," Julian said, his hand tightening on mine. "They took advantage of your kindness, of your love for them. But you're stronger than they think. You're going to get through this." His words offered a flicker of hope in the darkness that had consumed me. But it was a fragile hope, easily extinguished by the memory of my parents' cold, dismissive faces in the courtroom. They hadn't even looked at me, hadn't acknowledged the years I'd sacrificed for them. The emptiness in their eyes was more devastating than any shouted accusation. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. I had to focus. I had to find a way to fight back. "I need to go back inside," I announced, pushing open the car door. "What? Why?" Julian asked, surprise evident in his voice. "I remembered something," I said, a sudden spark of determination igniting within me, something that could change everything. The courtroom was almost empty, the echoes of legal jargon replaced by an unsettling silence. I walked towards the clerk's office, my heart pounding in my chest. I needed to find a court reporter, the one who had transcribed everything said during the initial hearing. My lawyer, Ms. Ramirez, had told me that I could request a copy of the transcript. "Excuse me," I said to the woman behind the counter. "I'm Jessica Thompson. I'm here to request a copy of the transcript from my case against my parents." The words felt heavy, leaden with shame and resentment. The clerk, a woman with tired eyes and a tight bun, looked at me with a mixture of pity and indifference. "Name of the case?" she asked, her voice monotone. "Thompson versus Thompson," I reply, the absurdity of the situation hitting me anew. I was suing my own flesh and blood. How had things come to this? While the clerk processed my request, I paced back and forth, my mind racing. During the hearing, my mother had testified that she had no knowledge of my savings account, the one I had painstakingly built over the years working double shifts at the diner. She'd claimed it was all Mark's money, that he'd earned it through part-time jobs and scholarships. A blatant lie. But there had been a moment, a fleeting hesitation in her voice when she mentioned the specific amount in the account. It was a detail I hadn't thought much of at the time, lost in the whirlwind of accusations and denials. But now, it gnawed at me, a nagging suspicion that there was more to it than met the eye. "Here you go," the clerk said, handing me a thick stack of papers. "That will be $50. I paid, my hands trembling slightly as I took the transcript. I found a quiet corner in the hallway and began to read, scanning the pages, searching for that specific moment. The legalese was dense, the back and forth between the lawyers tedious, but I persevered, driven by a growing sense of hope. And then, there it was, buried deep within the transcript. A single sentence, a throwaway remark made by my mother during cross-examination. I don't know exactly how much Mark had saved," she had stammered. "But I know it was around that amount." Yes, that's right, that hesitation, that subtle shift in her tone. It was all there, captured in black and white. It wasn't definitive proof, not on its own, but it was a crack in her carefully constructed facade. It was a starting point. I flipped back a few pages, rereading the section where my lawyer questioned my brother Mark. He had been smug, arrogant, confident in his lies. He had corroborated his mother's story, claiming the money was his, earned through hard work and academic achievement. But there had been one detail, a small slip-up that I hadn't noticed at the time. He'd mentioned receiving a large scholarship check just a few weeks before my parents withdrew the money from my account. My heart began to race. If I could prove that Mark had received a substantial scholarship, it would cast serious doubt on his claim that the money in the account was his own. It would expose the lie, the deception that had shattered my family and left me facing homelessness. I pulled out my phone and called Ms. Ramirez. "I found something," I said, my voice trembling with excitement. "Something in the transcript. I need to meet with you as soon as possible." "What is it, Jessica?" she asked, her voice sharp, professional. My mother hesitated when she was asked about the amount in the account. I explained, my words tumbling out in a rush. "And my brother mentioned receiving a large scholarship around the same time. If I can prove he got that scholarship, it will prove they lie." There was a moment of silence on the other end of the line. Then, Ms. Ramirez said, "This could be significant, Jessica. Meet me at my office first thing tomorrow morning. We'll discuss this further and see what we can do." I hung up, a surge of adrenaline coursing through me. It wasn't over. I still had a chance. I could still fight back. I could still expose the truth. The gavel banged, my heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the hush of the courtroom. Judge Mallory peered down at me, her expression unreadable. "Miss Thompson," she said, her voice echoing through the silent room. "Do you have any final statements?" I swallowed, my throat suddenly dry. "Yes, Your Honor," I managed, my voice barely a whisper. I glanced at my parents. They sat rigidly in the front row, their faces pale, their eyes avoiding mine. My brother, Ethan, sat beside them, staring straight ahead, a muscle twitching in his jaw. "This case," I began, my voice gaining strength, "isn't just about money. It's about family betrayal. Her daughter's sacrifice turns into a shocking theft." I took a deep breath, remembering the countless nights I'd worked double shifts at the diner. The exhaustion etched into my bones, the chipped mugs, the greasy smell of bacon clinging to my clothes, the constant ache in my feet. All for them, also they could have a better life. Also Ethan could go to his dream college. I gave up my future, I said, my voice trembling slightly, my education, my dreams. For my family. I trusted them. I believed in them. I looked directly at my parents, and they repaid my sacrifice by stealing my savings, leaving me homeless on my birthday, just so Ethan could keep playing football. My mother's lip quivered. My father shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Ethan finally met my gaze, his eyes filled with a mixture of shame and defiance. "Jess," he muttered. "It wasn't like that. I interrupted, my voice rising. You knew where that money came from. You knew I was sleeping in my car while you were living comfortably in our house, enjoying the life I paid for." "Order." Judge Mallory's sharp voice cut through the tense atmosphere. I took another deep breath, trying to regain my composure. I presented evidence. I continued, my voice steadier now, showing the withdrawals from my account, the deposits into Ethan's tuition account, the eviction notice. The evidence speaks for itself. I turned to face the judge. "Your Honor, I'm not asking for revenge. I'm asking for justice. I'm asking for what is rightfully mine. I'm asking for my future back." My lawyer, Ms. Ramirez, squeezed my hand reassuringly. I gave her a small, grateful smile. She had been a rock through all of this, her sharp mind and unwavering support guiding me through the legal labyrinth. I couldn't have done it without her. Judge Mallory looked over the documents spread before her, her expression thoughtful. The silence in the courtroom was thick with anticipation. My heart pounded in my chest. This was it. Everything was riding on her decision. "Mr. and Mrs. Thompson," Judge Mallory said, her voice stern, "you have shown a blatant disregard for your daughter's sacrifice and well-being. Your actions are reprehensible." My parents flinched at her words. Ethan stared at the floor, his face red. "The court finds in favor of the plaintiff, Jessica Thompson," Judge Mallory declared. A wave of relief washed over me. I felt lightheaded, as if a heavy weight had been lifted from my shoulders. I wanted to cry, to laugh, to scream, but the judge wasn't finished. "Furthermore," she continued, "in light of the egregious nature of the defendant's actions, and considering the additional evidence presented regarding the recent passing of your grandmother, Eleanor Thompson," my breath caught in my throat. What was this? Judge Mallory held up a document. "It has come to the court's attention that Ms. Thompson's grandmother, Eleanor, amended her will shortly before her passing, leaving her entire estate, including her considerable assets and properties, to her granddaughter, Jessica Thompson." My eyes widened in disbelief. Grandma Eleanor, I remembered her fondly. She had always been kind to me, always seen through my parents' facade. She had always believed in me, but I hadn't seen her in years, after my parents had effectively cut off contact. "This amendment," Judge Mallory continued, "specifically cites the defendant's unconscionable treatment of their daughter as the reason for the change." She looked directly at my parents. "You agreed, Mr. and Mrs. Thompson," she said, her voice laced with contempt, "has cost you everything." My parents sat stunned, their mouths agape. Ethan stared at me, his eyes wide with shock. The courtroom buzzed with murmurs. Ms. Ramirez beamed at me, her eyes sparkling. "Justice served, Jessica," she whispered. I couldn't speak. I could only stare at the judge, my mind reeling. This wasn't just justice. This was a miracle. This was a second chance. A chance to rebuild my life, to pursue my dreams, to finally be free. The gavel banged again. The sound echoed through the courtroom, signaling the end of a chapter in my life. But this wasn't the end. This was the beginning. I stood up tall, my head held high, a new sense of purpose coursing through my veins. I was no longer a victim. I was a survivor. And I was finally going to live the life I deserved. A life that wasn't defined by their betrayal, but by my own strength and resilience. A life that was truly, finally, my own.